I don't know about you all, but life has felt like it has sped up a lot in 2026. And recently I've felt the message that I really need to slow down. Like, I really need to build upon my meditation and sitting practice. I really need to make time each and every day to send some prayers and wishes into the world because there is a lot happening right now. Um, there's a lot moving really, really quickly. And I feel like we are in this pivotal kind of turning point in a lot of ways. And that is reflected, of course, astrologically, and also in the cards that I pulled for us for this week. So we have a new moon in a couple of days. The moon will be in the sign of Cancer, which is where the sun is at right now. You see that the moon is just in the final degrees of Gemini currently. The sun is also right now in a cazimi with the planet Mercury, which basically means that they are in the exact degree, and Mercury is like passing through the gauntlet of the sun, and it's currently in retrograde, which of course we won't be able to see Mercury right now because it's hidden by the light of the sun and the brightness of the sun. But whenever Mercury, which is likened to Quicksilver as far as planetary energetics go, because it governs communication and it governs travel and like long distance and short distance travel. It governs matters around your vehicle, communications, elementary education, things like that. Like it's a learning kind of planet, but it is in energetic of retrograde. So visibly, it would look like it was moving backwards in the sky, but of course we can't see it. It will continue to be retrograde for about another 10 days or so, and then it will start moving in forward motion again, and it won't be out of its shadow path until like the beginning of August, which means it's retrograding or visibly going backwards over a certain amount of degrees. And when it moves forward again, it will pass over those degrees. And once it's finally out of that space where it went retrograde, it's out of its shadow period. So there's likely, communications coming in because there is this visitation between the planet of Mercury and the sun. And this is a period of time that is in review. So, of course, it makes sense to me that I personally feel a need to slow down and not move as quickly, even though, as someone who has a Virgo rising in my chart, my chart's governed by the planet of Mercury. So whatever Mercury is doing is going to be affecting me a lot, as it would with people who also have a strong Gemini uh, positioning in their chart. Like if they have a Gemini rising, then they're going to have Mercury rule their chart, or if they even have Mercury in Gemini, it would be in its rulership, or if Mercury is in Virgo, again, it would be in its rulership. So we're just in this place of review, and so communications could come in. There could be kind of mishaps with plans. Things may be getting rearranged kind of suddenly and out of the blue. Plans can fall through, and that's because largely the sun and Mercury are in this kind of dance, where Mercury has slowed down a little bit and things are getting adjusted. Now, if we just follow the wheel, we can see that there's this larger planet in the beginning degrees of Leo, and that is the planet of Jupiter. Now, that's one of our key energetic shifts for this month because Jupiter takes 12 years to move around the whole zodiac system, and so it will be in the sign of Leo for roughly about a year. Jupiter is a planet of expansion, and Leo, depending on where it is in your chart, whether it's in your first house, second house, third house, anywhere around the chart, that would be the area that you would be experiencing expansion upon, especially if you have uh, any planets in the sign of Leo or if you have a Leo rising. But it'll be there for a year, kind of creating expansion in your life in that area. Then we have these two celestial bodies, or one's a celestial body, one's more of a mathematical point. But Venus just entered the sign of Virgo. And Venus will be in Virgo for a little while. I should probably check actually how long Venus is going to be in Virgo. Um, just through about, yeah, the beginning of August, like August 8th, Venus will be in Virgo. Venus doesn't necessarily like to be in Virgo. Consider Venus likes to have an abundance of things. It likes to have things taken care of. It likes to nurture things. And Virgo, it can be, kind of critical. And so having it in that energy for the next month or so, it'll bring love and it'll bring acceptance to those areas that you feel critical about yourself, but it's going to be a challenge in a lot of ways. It's not an easy experience. And I say that especially because Venus is kind of going through the gauntlet right now. You see this darker, you might or might not see this darker little sheen down here, depending on the light. I know it's doing weird things. I'm recording with my computer because I don't have enough data on my phone to make recordings, which is why I haven't done one in a while. So I'm trying this out. I might add some light to make it better. Um, but this is the South Node here, and the South Node has been going through the sign of Virgo, and the South Node is where we need to let go of things. And so it may be, in fact, that we need to let go of that inner critic, that we need to kind of review that aspect of ourselves, of where we're really hard on ourselves, and also, what daily habits, what things we do by way of how we take care of ourselves, what we need to transform or change, because that's what Virgo governs is, our preventative health and our daily routines and how well we take care of ourselves. It's a sign that's governed by the element of Earth and the planet of Mercury, which is why it wants to be really practical in everything that it does, and it can be overly critical if something isn't practical, because it just doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, why bother? So they can be kind of rough and abrasive in that way, but Venus will kind of soften them up. And I do think that this is a space where we're in a place of review of something that we need to kind of resolve or sacrifice. Like if we have our own inner saboteur, where can we sacrifice that? Now, if we continue just counterclockwise around this diagram, we see that there's Pluto over here in the beginning degrees of Aquarius. And then, of course, we have the North Node in directly opposite position of the South Node. So it's at 0 degrees of Pisces. So if you have any planets around that area, you're going to be feeling the need to develop that space. And again, wherever your rising sign is, the house that's in is going to show something that is going to be growing and developing in time. We also have this grouping of planets up here. We have Neptune and Saturn, which are currently separating. They're in the sign of Aries. We have Chiron that just moved into the sign of Taurus. Chiron was first discovered, in like 1977. So it was initially in Taurus way back then, and right now it's going through like its first return, so to speak. So if you were born in like the mid to late 70s, you're going to be experiencing a Chiron return here in the next little while. Then we have this grouping of planets here, and this is one of our big shifting pieces that's going to be affecting our lives as well. We see Uranus, which is at 3 or 4 degrees of Gemini, and then, oh, it is 4 degrees. And then Mars, which is at 9 degrees of Gemini, and they just had a conjunction on the 3rd of July, which is notable of some big shift or some big change that's happening in your life. And that's also a big transitioning point because Uranus takes 84 years to go around this whole wheel, so it will be in the sign of Gemini for roughly the next 7 years. And the last time it was in the sign of Gemini was 84 years ago. So if you want to have an idea of the flavor of what's going on in the world and just reflect on the similarities as to what's going on in the world now, it might be worthwhile to just look back in history and see what was going on 84 years ago when Uranus was in a similar position. But whenever Mars and Uranus come into like a square or a conjunction, typically like there's something that happens. And because Uranus will be in this sign for the next 7 years, every time that Mars goes through Uranus or goes through Gemini, which is every couple of years, we're going to be experiencing that kind of pivotal point. Likewise, anytime Mars goes through any square position, so when it's in Virgo or when it's in Sagittarius or when it's in Pisces, and it'll be in either opposition or at a 90-degree angle, it will create some kind of friction or challenge. So we have that fun experience to deal with. But everything's a cycle, right? And that's what is so interesting is that while we are experiencing all of these technological shifts that are happening and all of these things that are happening global wide, there's cycles that are happening and there's timing that is happening, and we can reflect on that by way of astrology. The reading and what came through today is really interesting, and why I'm kind of boggled by it, honestly, is that I pulled us 10 cards, and of the 10 cards, 7 of them are major arcana. If you're familiar with the Tarot, there's 78 cards in the Tarot system. 22 of those are major arcana, and the other 56 are all in like suited cards, right? So there's kind of an overabundance of major arcana in our reading today. And they're also associated with like more life path things, like big lessons that we have to learn from. And so I just want to go through these, and hopefully it'll, give you some support and guidance in what you're going through in your lives, because what I discovered many years ago when I started, reading daily just for the general public is that when major arcana show up, they are reflecting things that are going on astrologically, because a lot of them have relationships with particular signs or particular planets. And so when they show up, they can be highlighting things. And that's why I wanted to just first walk through what we see if we look at, the astrological map for today. And of course, in 2 days, we'll have a new moon. So that'll be a time of a new beginning and a new kind of seed planting, so to speak, in our lives, which we'll see bear fruit in roughly about 6 months when we have a full moon in Cancer and the sun is in Capricorn. So there's a cycle to things, and depending on what the energy is and who the player is, it gives a flavor or personality to what's happening. And so just to go through the cards, I think it's pretty interesting and notable, and it highlights what's going on with Mercury. So whatever you're feeling like you really need to kind of push right now, I suggest you give yourself a little bit of time to kind of fluff it out a little bit more. Our opening card that we have for our reading for this week is the Empress card. Now, the Empress card, we see a woman who is, let's see, can I get the glare off of it? Maybe. We see a woman who is sitting on a bench. She has some roses to her side. There is kind of an orchard or forest of cypress behind her. She has some stars circling around her head, and her foot is on a crescent moon. Now, the Empress is a woman who looks pregnant. So, of course, if you are of the age, and granted, this is a general reading for everyone, so it's not going to be applicable to everyone. But if you are of the age where you could possibly become pregnant and you don't want to, it's always good to have caution of that, because we want to be aware of what we're creating in the world. But this doesn't just speak to pregnancy. This speaks to anything that we're giving birth into the world of. And this could be an idea. This could be a business. This could be a book. This could be a new job. This could be some endeavor of some sort. And this is asking us, what does it take to nurture it? Now, I find it's interesting because the Empress does lend energies to the planet of Venus, and Venus is going through this gauntlet of the South Node. So, we all, each and every one of us, we only have 24 hours of the day, we have 7 days a week, and we can each, if we're honest with ourselves, reflect upon perhaps behaviors or routines or habits that aren't necessarily for our better good, things that might be in contrast to what we would say would nurture ourselves, you know, whether it's smoking too much, cigarettes or cannabis, or drinking too much, or doom scrolling too much, or, you know, like just some behavior that tends to be a way of escape that is ultimately kind of spending your time like frivolously. And what is it that you actually want to nurture, that you feel like if you had the time to do, you could actually grow into something that bears fruit? I think with this South Node and Venus going through this transition right now of their meeting and this conversation that they're having, so to speak, in the sky, is that we're examining that, and we're having to be really sober and honest with ourselves as far as where we get in our own way. Now, the challenge that we have that showed up is actually the Temperance card, which is an interesting card to show up as a challenge card, because this is a card that's like the energetic of the teacher and the helper. You know, this card is like seeing the big picture, not being attached to things. And it came in as our challenge. So maybe that's it. You know, it's interesting because Virgo as an energetic, which I will say we all have Virgo in our chart somewhere, because we all have this wheel in our natal chart. It's just dependent on where Virgo sits in your chart and how it's showing up and reflecting in your life. But Virgo as a sign tends to focus on the little things. It's often said that they don't see the forest for the tree. Like they are so busy focusing on the details that they don't see the big picture. And we see in this card that this person is seeing these symbols kind of expand into the distance. So they're expanding on this idea and this manifestation, or this, you know, ideal thing that they want to create in the world. And this is showing up as a challenge card. That's really interesting to me, because this card is also reflective of, you know, a person who's basically using two opposing forces to make something alchemical happen. In the card itself, they're holding two goblets, and they're pouring at this odd angle, which doesn't typically happen in reality, right? Water doesn't pour, liquid doesn't pour at a 45-degree angle. It pours perpendicular to the ground. And so there's something alchemical happening here. And there's also this energetic of the person standing in the water and standing on the ground. And so they're trying to find balance, and they're trying to you know, figure out their way through this thing. And this is also reflecting on the sign, or the planet rather, of Jupiter. And Jupiter does that. It expands upon things, it expands upon ideas. And Jupiter just went into the sign of Leo. So I do think that while the coming year, and I say the coming year because Jupiter went into Leo. Da, 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 da. Where are you, Jupiter? Mm-mm-mm. Jupiter went into Leo in the beginning of July, quite literally, like the last day of June. And so it will be there for a year. And so there's something that we are being asked to expand in our lives, which is going to challenge us. But you have to remember that nothing that, or I just almost said a double negative. Everything that is worthwhile is going to challenge you. It's important to rise up to the challenges. It's important to take on the challenges, because without the challenge, we don't grow, right? Even the small little seed has to push against the earth, has to push against rocks, has to push against ground to reach towards the sun, to actually grow and potentially bear fruit. And so, in a lot of ways, we're seeing that in our lives. We're seeing where we are being asked to expand upon in our lives, and what we need to sacrifice to be able to do that. Now, the way through the challenge is the first one of three minor arcana that showed up for our reading this week, and that is the Seven of Wands. So we see someone's holding a wand, they're standing on some kind of platform, and there's these six wands out in front of them, which seem to be challenging them in a lot of ways. And the Seven of Wands is all about learning where to place your will and to have boundaries, right? Like, don't interact with something that's a waste of your time. Interact with something that it might cause friction, but it's going to cause warmth. It's going to cause some kind of new beginning, something you can maybe cook a meal on, something that you can kind of carve out some time for yourself to do, because we see this person holding space and holding themselves a little separate from others, who are, kind of surrounding them with their own will, right? So because wands are associated with our will, they're associated with, the element of fire, but it's our willfulness. And so when we have our will and it's showing us that we need to have a boundary, that can show up in a few different ways. That can show up in our own resistance, can show up in, you know, something kind of shutting down. Like if you somatically like feel yourself like wrapping your shoulders around your heart, there can be kind of this somatic body way of like separating yourselves from others. And that's an important cue to take on and recognize when you're in an environment and with certain people, because it may be the people that we surround ourselves, which is our biggest limiting factor, right? If you're trying to, as I said, if you're trying to quit drinking and you always hang out at the bar, it's going to be hard to quit drinking, right? Especially if everyone you hang out at the bar with drinks, or if the bar itself doesn't have any non-alcoholic beverages or whatever. If you live in a household where people smoke cigarettes, or you hang out with people that all smoke cigarettes and you want to quit smoking cigarettes, it's going to be harder. And so there has to be something that we gather from our own experience that allows us to, from that learning, shift our lives. The only way we'll be able to do that is by way of holding a boundary. Now, the ultimate way, or the ultimate outcome, this is where things got really interesting, is the first one of which we had the Hermit card. Now, the Hermit is associated with the sign of Virgo. So this is highlighting that energetic of the Venus South Node relationship yet again. And Virgo, of course, is governed by Mercury. So it's highlighting this Mercury retrograde yet again. This time of review, this time of rethinking things, this time of revisiting things. But the Hermit, they have like separated themselves away from the world. They've kind of climbed up this mountain, and through that experience, they've gathered a lot of knowledge, and they're holding out this lantern to others. So remember that all of the experiences and hardships and whatever you are going through right now, it's not for naught, right? It's something that you can share, that honestly is the most valuable thing that you can share with other people, is your honest, true experience. How you healed yourself, how you navigated treacherous emotional terrain or financial terrain, and whatever it is that you've overcome is ultimately what you can help guide other people through. And I think the Hermit is reminding us of that. And that is followed by the Five of Pentacles, which is this card. It's all about a choice of if we see something as like a hardship or if we see it as like a spiritual teaching. And I think that's important here to recognize as well, because fives are a matter of choice. In the Roman numeral system, fives are a V, right? They're a fork in the road. And your path that you walk upon is greatly determined in how you see things and your perspective in things. And which is why I think it's so important that we take this journey of the Hermit and take some time to heal ourselves and to look at ourselves and see what maybe we need to let go of, so that we can really look at what is essential in our lives. This is so interesting to me because this card then is followed by the moon. And again, we have a new moon here in a couple of days, a new moon in the sign of Cancer, which, again, depending on where Cancer is in your chart, it's going to be a new beginning in that area of your life. But the moon is always representing this kind of shift of perspective of things that we don't see, things that are in the dark, and things that are coming to the surface. And new moons are always times of darkness. Like if you go out at night during a new moon, especially where I live, you will not see anything, right? It's very, very dark. Whereas if you compare a full moon, you can actually see quite a bit during a time of a full moon. And I've actually found my way down a path in a in an area where I didn't have a headlamp and there was just like puddles from rain, and because of the moon's reflection on the puddles, I was able to find my way back from like a 3-hour hike in the middle, like after the sunset. So the moon light can be really powerful in how it affects our perspective and our ability to see things. And yet it's also a time of new beginnings. And so I guess what I want to I share with you as far as like a way of perspective is that wherever you are right now in this moment, whatever shifts and aggravations and frustrations you feel right now are going to be different in 6 months' time. And how different they are depend largely on your point of view and your perspective, your ability to find gratitude in every single day, your ability to let go of that which does not nurture you and serve you, and your ability to give energy to things that you want to build. And that 6 months of time can be vastly different than what you're feeling right now, right? Instead of being on the outside looking in, you could be on the inside welcoming people in, which is a vastly different experience. And the moon is begging us of that. It tells us we cannot get beyond the towers, just like in the never ending story. We can't get beyond the towers unless we're pure of heart, unless we're bringing to the table that which we know we're here to bring to the table. And in this card, we see a domesticated dog and a wolf and a path in between them. And what's traveling along the path in between them is a scarab. And then there's also a little crustration in the water behind it. And that's reminiscence of this transformation quality that's happening, and that which we have to balance in ourselves as far as what is wild and what is true of heart and that which we've been conditioned to do. And so this is a big shifting point for all of us, I believe. And then we have the following card of the Strength card, which is a woman who's kind of wrapping her arm around the scuff and mane of a lion. And she's just come over this kind of rope bridge, and she has a infinity kind of snake symbol above her head, and some roses wrapped around her and the lion. Now this is an interesting card as well to show up, because strength is reminding us that we have to be willing to take risks to listen to our heart. And the strength card is associated with Leo. And that's why I think this year is going to be such a pivotal time for all of us, especially if you're willing to nurture that which you feel like in your heart you're called to nurture most of all. And you feel it, right? Like you feel it by way of like almost like a sense of your heart blooming or opening, rather than closing, right? It's a somatic sensation in the body, and there's an excitement to it rather than resistance. So this is a really key card to show up as well, especially because Leo has Jupiter in it right now, and then of course the sun will be in the sign of Leo towards the end of the month, and it will be in conjunction with Jupiter uh, in August at some point, because that's when the sun is in Leo. But actually, at the very end of July, um, we'll see the sun conjunct Leo, or sun conjunct Jupiter. So there might be kind of an aha point there, or like a really big kind of push moment as far as the epiphany of what is you're being called to expand upon. And so these last couple weeks of July and the first couple weeks of August, I think we'll get a better taste of it. But we're in this space of review. And then, of course, we have another card, which is following the Strength card, which is another major arcana. And this one is the Hierophant, which is associated with the zodiac sign of Taurus. But this is kind of like the spiritual teacher, or something that's hidden that's about to be shown, like a secret that's about to be revealed. And I think that's a kind of a pivotal aha moment as well, because you see in this card there's like a sacredness to it. It looks to be that they're inside of a church. You have this priest, and in front of him he has these two people who are like his disciples or monks or saints of some sort, and they're taking on a teaching from him. And so there is this kind of flavor or this aspect of something that's beyond the mundane that's being asked to get some attention to it and to have like a true commitment to it, because this is also notable of commitments. And so that speaks to me too. And then our final two cards that we have for our reading for this week, one of them kind of highlights a lot of what I said. It's the last minor arcana of the tarot reading that we have for the day, which is the Four of Swords. And in this card, we see someone who's laying down in this kind of gray stone room with a sword underneath their bed. They are holding their hand in prayer position, and some leaves are kind of growing from the palm of their hand. And then the background, you see three framed swords that are upright and a stained glass window at the crest or the top of the image. And the Four of Swords is kind of like the long question. And so it's telling that there's something that you've been sitting with and that we've all been sitting with, which is our own personal flavor of experience that we've kind of been holding to the side, that we've been praying for an opportunity to make it happen. And so I just want to remind you how powerful those prayers and wishes are, because they don't always come with comfortable change. In my experience, the biggest shifts in my life that have led me to the most beautiful experiences have been unexpected. But again, I have a lot of kind of fixed planets or fixed placements in my natal chart. So I don't like change. And so, but when things do change, I reroute really well. It's just, I'm not like, woo, what, like, let's change our plans all the time. That's just not in my the way that my being operates. And so this is heightening that in each of us. Like, what long question have you been sitting with that you've been wanting to come to bear fruit that perhaps you didn't know if it would ever happen? Well, if some big change happens, I would suggest that you plant that seed in the ground and see what can come out of it, because we only have one life to live, right? And our final card for this 10 card spread, I know it's a long spread and it's a long reading, it's over 30 minutes. The final card is the Lover's card. Now, this is a card, it's all about choices, not just relationship, but like choices in life, like what we choose. Do we choose the sacred? Do we choose the mundane? And what's interesting about this particular card is that it's also governed by the planet of Mercury and the sign of Gemini. And so I really feel like the changes that we're experiencing right now, which are kind of giving us like the most work, is this aspect here between the South Node and Venus, which is in the beginning degrees of Virgo, and then this conjunction up here with Mars and Uranus, because Uranus is about big unexpected change, and Mars initiates things. And they are in a 90-degree, roughly, relationship with Venus in the South Node. And granted, also the North Node. But whenever there's a 90-degree angle, it's a challenge. And challenges show up because we need to see something that we wouldn't have seen if things weren't so challenging, right? And that thing that we see is going to cause some kind of change in our lives if we're honest with ourselves and if we're true to ourselves and really are willing to sacrifice that which we do in our own lives that is in the way of what we feel called to do. And with this card kind of ending with the Lover's card, I think it is again kind of confirming this time frame that we're currently in, where Mercury is in retrograde, and it'll be, moving forward again in forward motion in July, and then of course out of its shadow period in early August. So there's this time frame of review and consideration that's kind of like the gathering of energy before you like set off a slingshot, or like potential energy before it's set into motion. And that's kind of where we're all at. Like this year, Mercury is doing all of its retrogrades in all of the water signs. And so that speaks to me that we are learning how to, or reconsidering maybe how to navigate those waters of our lives, the emotional waters that may have maybe like ran some treacherous rivers in our lives and carved out some spaces we've been trying to navigate, whether mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, otherwise. And so we're getting this space of review so that we can make some adjustments and so that we can pivot into the direction we feel like we're really called to nurture for the coming 6 months and likely even longer, especially with Uranus up there in Gemini for the next 7 years. I would think that we're going to be experiencing some changes for the next 7 years for sure. And ultimately, we got to be true to ourselves. So make sure you take some time to sit in the morning and balance out your nervous system. Make sure you take some time to review your habits and make sure you're eating well and tending to yourself, your mind, your emotions, hanging out with humans and animals. I know my dog today just like came and collapsed on me, and it was like the best medicine I've had in a while, just to like have them come and crash out on me and look up at me. So, gotta relish ourselves in those sweet moments and just flow with each and every day as it comes. I send a good wish to you, and I hope you're well, and I will see you again soon. If you're interested in my deck, I have it available for sale on my website at rootsofalchemy.com. It's Delaney's Classic Tarot deck. I also offer readings, and then I will be offering some medicine making classes in the coming weeks here soon, because that's the bridge I'm going to be building, because I am definitely feeling the call to do that. So I send you a lot of love and many good wishes. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.